Hey y'all, it's your sis Dobijoki, and you are tuned in to You Are Power Radio on Dobijoki TV, a platform where guests own their power by telling their stories. Today we have a special guest by the name of Toby Sicks. Please listen to the interview all the way through. Don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, leave a comment, share with your networks, and continue to tell your story. Peace.
Tanchi, my name is Toby Sicks. That is my actor stage name, activist name, poetry, spoken word name, whatever. It's sort of my name that, Toby Sicks is sort of my name that I keep away from my real name because of my community work. So I don't want to keep it associated with it because of the radical things that I do out there. If I ever apply for a job in the community worker field, I don't want my real name to be attached to any crazy things that I've done. So I use Toby Sicks for all my radical movement thingies. So I am Métis from the Métis Nation of Ontario. So I come from the ancestries of the Red River. So the ancestry of Nani Charles de la Ronde, and Magdalene Powaji. So she's a woman from Lake Simcoe actually. So she's a Chippewa from Lake Simcoe. Okay. So that's basically who I am. Community worker, activist, tattoo artist.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned a few things. You mentioned the fact that, the way you project your name, like the fact that you have two, names that you use, is to not only protect your family, but it's also to separate the fact that, you're an activist on one side and then there's some professionalism that is required on the other. Do you feel that, it's something that you felt obligated to do? Or do you think this is just part of...
Well, I find that when I was doing spoken word and poetry and things like that, and I do dabble in rap and things like that, that having a stage name is not quite uncommon. When I started doing activism and things like that, and I really coming down to think about it in a political micro-meso-maso, really thinking about it. And bringing it down to a real good conclusion, and thinking, weighing down the goods and the bads of having a different name, that it's a very good idea, because this way, if you're attacking a particular corporation or industry or whatnots, or religion, let's say, or whatnots or whatever, because a lot of these entities are tied into a lot of inequalities within our communities.
Speaking of inequalities, right? I know you mentioned and you introduced yourself as being Indigenous from the Métis Nation of Ontario. And I think that's really important for people to understand and recognize. And it's unfortunate that we live in a society where, the Indigenous experiences are not at the forefront. And some of the things that you had previously mentioned, for example, justice for Colton, justice for Tina, the other challenges that happen with Indigenous communities here in Ontario. What can you say in regards to the awareness that people have, or the awareness that people don't have about Indigenous issues?
I mean, it stems from a long line of ignorance. I mean, a lot of people don't know that Indigenous people were not even crowned war until 1957, 1956. So Indigenous people were not even citizens of Canada, weren't even allowed to vote until 1956, 57. So 1956 was when the Queen announced it. 1957 was when she publicly announced it to make sure that everybody got the point.
Wow.
She had to come out and publicly announce it for government officials to actually take it seriously. So they still weren't budging. Like she made it, like passes a law or whatever, like policy, 1956. Now, Crown Ward, whatnots, they're now citizens, Crown Ward, they can now vote, this and that. But we were still not given the opportunity. We were still not given the opportunity to have the same equal rights. So she had to publicly announce it. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of people don't know this. So they're like, what do you mean you don't have equal rights? What do you mean? They think it's so simple for our people to just up and leave a community and go into another community and integrate and and it's like, where are we supposed to live? Where's the money supposed to come from?
Exactly.
How are we supposed to adapt when the racism is stemmed there from a lot of intergenerational intergenerational trauma or intergenerational communication barriers. So I mean, it's like, what do you call that? Institutional racism that's been, built in there systemically, and then they want us just to move out of a remote location, come into this community, which is full of systemic racism, and then adapt to within that community. And just like nothing's wrong, and then people are like, well, you can do it. And it's like, well, it's easy for you to say because you're not a person of color.
And they don't recognize their privilege.
No.
Right.
No.
And so, like, everything you're saying, like, it resonates with me because I witnessed it as well. Although my experiences are a bit different, being a black woman and being a visitor on this land, I acknowledge the way systemic racism...
it's not quite that much different. Actually.
It's not that much.
No, it's not different at all.
Yeah, not that much different. However, I recognize that I'm a visitor.
That's the only difference.
Exactly.
That's actually the only difference.
And I respect that you say that.
It's the only difference. It's just, the only difference is that you're a visitor, that's it. Everything else is the same. It may be even a little bit worse at some points.
Some degrees,
you know what I mean? So I mean, it has its ups and downs, but I mean, still, at some points, you know what I mean, it's hard for me to sit back and watch my people suffer like that at some points. Because like, I mean, for me as a Métis person, I have privilege. I'm Métis, so I mean, I have that white privilege.
So maybe explain a little bit what Métis means.
So Métis is of mixed heritage. So I mean, I have a little bit of European heritage in me, and I have Indigenous heritage in me. So my dad is Norwegian, so he's white. My mom is Native, so she's Indigenous. So I have that privilege of having
like white passing.
The white passing. You know what I mean? So I can use my privilege in a positive way for my people. So I chose that. I choose to use my privilege in a positive way. Every day I use that privilege in a positive way. So I try to empower myself with that privilege. You know what I mean? So I can do better for my people every day. Right?
Exactly. So what does it mean to do better for your people? Because there's so many different things that we can do.
So I mean, I'm in a position where sometimes I can have more opportunity. And then by having that opportunity, let's say I can access information or I can access services that easier, or some people will talk to me likelier than, or I could pass in some circumstances in a lighter way, so then I'll take advantage of that. You know what I mean? And I'll get as much information or whatever as I can
to share with the community.
At one instance, I was working for the Métis Nation of Ontario, and there was a Métis woman. She was at the sick kids hospital, and they were giving her a hard time, and they didn't want her to leave there with her daughter because she was Indigenous. Now clearly they were giving her a hard time, she was checking all of her checks, feeding her baby properly. Everything was properly documented, and I was going there as a student, and I was checking, and everything was checked. Everything was properly taken care of. But the doctors were saying other things. They were saying other things, and they were trying to go. But they didn't know that I was there checking all of this stuff, and they didn't know that I was Native working for Métis Nation. So I was white passing. So the doctors didn't know. They thought I was somebody else.
Wow.
So when I spoke up and I said, well, excuse me, I'm here with the Métis Nation of Ontario. And I said, and if you're going to say that she's not feeding her baby properly, I'm going to take this information to the proper authorities or to my boss, and I'm going to show them all of this, because I took a picture of all of this stuff and all of the information, and I've been monitoring all of the documents and all of your papers that you've been signing off on, that she's been feeding her baby properly.
Wow.
And then their face went. They went into a little meeting, they came back, they says, it's okay, she can take her baby home.
Can you imagine?
So I saved her from being able to take her baby home. You see what I mean? They wanted to take her baby away.
And put them in the system.
Probably something
exactly
like that.
what they've done historically.
Yeah.
Right.
So I took my privilege and
used it in that way. No, that's very powerful.
Because I wasn't telling them where I was from at first.
Exactly.
I was just doing my thing, hush. Speaking with her, going to visit her every day.
Which sometimes we have to do.
So what we did was we paid her, like, we were paying like her travel and her medical expenses through the Métis Nation.
Wow. Wow.
And then we took care of that.
So in instances like this, because it happens so often, right? What kind of, I don't know whether it's advice or what can you say in regards to the fact that we kind of have to try to navigate the systems without having any support within them, right? You know, not to say that, because even within these priority communities, for example, I could speak for my community. I grew up in a priority community, and we didn't have much access. But when we did, the services were still very poor. And so what can you say about, you know, accessing services and not having allies within there?
That's a little bit complicated because within our own organizations, there's sometimes a little bit of conflict. But all in all, like, I mean, accessing services is pretty good for our people. We won't turn away other people as other organizations will turn our people away.
Yeah.
So if you're not Indigenous and you still want services at, let's say, AHT Anishinaabe Health Toronto, you bring your OHIP card or whatever, and you go there and you still want help, you can still get help. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So our people will still help in an equality manner, like we're not going to be biased or racist against anybody who wants cultural medicine and stuff like that. So in my point of view, I find that accessing services is not that difficult if you want to go out and ask. So there's certain services like in Toronto, like Miziwe, biik, Council Fire, Anishinaabe Health Toronto, Native Legal Services or Anishinaabe Legal Service. Yeah, that's what it is, Native Legal Services. So we got that as well.
Wow.
So and it offers a lot of ranges from different services through employment, through healing, through sweat lodges, through mental health and addictions, everything, like anything we need, you know, groups, elder, you're speaking to elders, everything, you know, like anything for going back to language.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to ask, because
even like I think they even have like a college, back to school college, like a college mentorship thingy that's going in with George Brown and stuff.
Oh, really?
So there's so much that has to offer in the community for the Indigenous services. It's like it's a huge community that sticks together. You know, like it's so positive. Yeah.
No, that's really good to hear, and to know that and that's part of the challenge, right? Like the resources. For example, I work for a nonprofit organization, and we might service Indigenous youth, right? I think part of the challenge is making sure that other nonprofits are aware that these resources are close by and that there's so many resources there for our Indigenous communities. And also not to, as soon as there's an Indigenous young person that comes to a particular organization, not to redirect them to the other service just because they're Indigenous, right?
Yeah.
Because I see that happening quite often as well.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, that people should include Indigenous people. Like, I mean, even though, you know, there's Indigenous services, like, I mean, that's what I was trying to say. Like, our services, a lot of our services are inclusive. You know, most of them are inclusive. I mean, some of them aren't, because, you know,
the priority is necessary.
Because of the priority is necessary. Not just that, because the funding only funds, right? The funding's only there for Indigenous people, and don't get me wrong, if the funding was there for more than just Indigenous people, we'd be there with open arms. Trust me, you know what I mean? Our elders would be there with open arms. It's just the capacity's not there.
And I mean, it's always been that way. Like, Indigenous people have always welcomed, right? Which is why these settlers decided to come and take advantage, right? Because Indigenous people have always been welcoming. However, I think one of the other things that I wanted to ask was in regards to, you know, you mentioned sweat lodges and Indigenous healing, right? And the fact that these things are very spiritual and very part of the Indigenous way of being. However, for some reason, it seems like it's been like monetized by non-Indigenous peoples. For example, you know,
monetized or appropriated?
Monetized and appropriated, right? For example,
appropriated. Here you go. Don't change the word from monetized. Appropriated.
No, thank you for the correction.
Non-Indigenous people.
Yeah, definitely appropriation, and then the monetization of that appropriation, right? Because people are charging for the sage and, you know, different things like that to heal, and non-Indigenous people to smudge, right?
I mean,
so what is that?
I mean, if you want to smudge, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with smudging. Anybody can smudge. I mean, I was told, like, I mean, I see two elders. I speak with two elders over at HT, and I mean, one of them told me that the color wheel is made of all people from all over the world: white, red, yellow, and black. So you got white people, you got black people, you got native people, the red, you got yellow people, the Asian people, you got people from all over the world. And that the Creator gave us the teachings to teach everybody, not just Indigenous people. So we shouldn't keep everything just for ourselves. We should be teaching everybody. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be. So all of this, shh, don't silence. That's intergenerational trauma thing. That's a thing that stems from genocide and colonialism when they came here and started killing everybody and stealing the land and torturing us for speaking our language and, you know, practicing our spirituality and traditions and culture. So we weren't allowed to do that. So they started getting rid of us and torturing us. So we stopped. Shh. Shh. Don't tell anybody. Don't share these things. Don't do that in public. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where it started being hush-hush, right? So now it's like more like, okay, look, now we're not going to get murdered for it and things like that. Like now it's more, the society's becoming more welcoming and inclusive and on an equality basis, and there's protection out there and stuff, and, you know, like more than before, like, you know, there's still a lot of harassment, but I mean, the protection is there. Nobody's going to murder anybody or commit genocide anymore. So, I mean, we're allowed to start sharing our culture and traditions again. So, I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, it comes to a point where, but only our elders that's been through the protocol, that's earned these rights, that's been through ceremony, that's earned the right to teach these things, is allowed to teach these things. Do you understand what I mean? You can't just up and go and teach this stuff when you feel like it, and then say, well, I can teach this. Like, the spirits are speaking to me, like, what are you, like a crazy person? You know, like, you have to earn this right. You have to go through certain practices, and you know, that elder's got to give you the right to do that. And respecting the culture, even if you wanted to practice aspects of it. That's another thing, you know. So, I mean, there comes to another point that I can't give the right to anybody to do anything either, but I can tell you one thing, that you have to earn that right to do it in the first place. You know what I mean? You can't just up and start a market and start selling stuff and, you know, start taking ownership of something that you don't even know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that becomes appropriation. Yeah, definitely. You know, and then monetizing on that and creating a, you know, a market and an economy on that. Without acknowledging the people itself, right? So that's the frustrating thing that I witnessed, because I know a lot of people who smudge, but don't acknowledge Indigenous peoples. A lot of people died for practicing their own culture and traditions, who were murdered, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, weren't even allowed to speak their own language, and then you have somebody who's never even, not even supposed to speak that language, and try to, you know, anyway. Or their ancestors had a part in killing, massacring or committing genocide on people. They're selling it and stuff, so it's pretty insulting. I mean, so what do you think, because I feel like it's also a part for non-Indigenous people to also make an effort to try to learn. And it's not the duty of Indigenous people to constantly be teaching, right? So what do you think, or what can you say in regards to that particular fact, the fact that, you know, people have to make an effort to learn about where they live and the history? I mean, acknowledging is a huge thing that, you know, is metastasizing our social norm throughout our society, and is creating a lot of stereotypes and, you know, and stigmas, and because of that, not acknowledging, you know, where you're living and how you came to be on this land, and then that also stems for a lot of ignorant, you know, like now you're becoming ignorant, and you're not allowing yourself to think of all of the history involved behind all of the things that happen to allow all of these stereotypes and stigmas to, you know, produce itself or manifest or come alive in front of your eyes, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, look at this and look at that, and then now you're having all these excuses, and you're saying, well, look at this and look at that and look at them, and whoa, they're useless, and you know, that person that's always humbug, you know, that person that doesn't see their privilege, and they're just I pay my taxes, and you know, and then but then they don't realize that 500 years ain't that long ago, and it's your booze, your drugs, okay? Now wait, your economy, your thieving of the land, your displacement, your government, your taking of resources, right? And leaving us with nothing that's caused all of this, right? Without your booze, your drugs, and without being displaced from our homes and starved from our foods, maybe we'd have a chance. Maybe we'd still be living in our communities, but you guys went and slaughtered us like sheep. You know, and then gave us booze and drugs. And then went and took our resources and created your own economy, and then created your racist little world, and then didn't allow us to come and work in there. And then now you're saying we're like this and we're like that, and you know, so I mean, that acknowledging of, you know what I mean, of where you live is a huge topic, because that's what all of that means. It means acknowledging where you stand, and then it means going back and making amends with all of the stereotypes and all of the stigmas, and realizing what they did to our people along the history line, and making amends for all of that. And it's almost like that word that they use, that fancy word there, you know what that fancy word they're using right now? What do they call it? The TRC, Truth and Reconciliation.
Truth and Reconciliation.
They have that fancy word, reconciliation. That's acknowledging where you stand. That's basically when you come down. That's my opinion. When I took political science, acknowledging where you stand on your land, that's reconciliation right there.
Wow.
That's true reconciliation.
That is very powerful. Acknowledge it. Yeah.
Because if you maso that, it means reconciliation. Because now you got to go and make amends to all of that shit.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So I mean, that's political science for you, right? So I mean,
that's very true.
Right.
That is powerful. I want to go back a little bit though. I want to talk maybe about your upbringing. And you know, how it led you to where you are today in terms of like your career.
So I was born in Hearst, Ontario. I was born in Hearst. So I grew up like on a little farm in Hearst, Ontario. With, my mom and dad, they separated, and I guess my grandparents had a big part in raising me. And then I lived there until I was about 16, 17. I moved away to Long Lac, Karamat, Ontario. So I was back and forth from Long Lac and Hearst.
When did you come to Toronto, and when did you decide that you wanted to do tattooing?
So I mean, I started tattooing on and off when I was 15, 16. I started dabbling in it, made my own tattoo machine, whatnot.
You made your own tattoo machine?
Yeah, when I was 15, and then I tattooed myself, and my grandmother beat me for it, and she was like, "No, you tattooed yourself."
Wait, how do you make your own tattoo machine first of all?
Out of a homemade, like a sewing machine motor and a pen and a spoon and an adapter and sewing machine pedal, and I was pretty creative.
Yeah.
16, 15. So
can you see the first
guitar string? No, I covered it up.
Oh, you covered. Where was it?
It was here.
Right there.
And I covered it up with the Queen of Spades here, with the card here.
What was the first tattoo?
It was like Guns N' Roses, head, skull, whatever. But it didn't really look like that.
Was there a meaning?
I mean, I like Guns N' Roses, you know, but it didn't look like that, so I got it covered up, you know.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so anyways, and whatever, I started tattooing my friends and this and that and whatever. But anyways, I came to Toronto in 2013. I was addicted to methadone, and I came to Toronto for rehab, so to clean up. So I was pretty much homeless, you know. I was on my own. My grandfather died, my grandmother died. I didn't have my own apartment. That was in 2013. So I was 33.
Wow.
I was 33, I didn't have my own apartment, didn't have my own place. I had a bag with my clothes and that's it. I didn't own anything. I never owned anything at all. Like I didn't have nothing. Just my clothes in the bag.
Wow.
So I went to rehab, and then I applied for college. So I ended up in a shelter at NAMI Res. So I went to Renison Treatment Center, then St. Michael's, and then from St. Michael's I went to NAMI Res. And then, well, first I started at Smootjock, I started at Smootjock Falls for 3 months, and then from Smootjock Falls they sent me to Renison Treatment Center, and at St. Michael's, and then from St. Michael's I went to NAMI Res, Sagate NAMI Res, the men's native shelter. And then I applied for college at George Brown College. I got accepted. So from 2013 that all happened, all the way to, I went to college. So, and then I finished at NAMI Res 2015, 2016, and then got an apartment, this and that. Met my wife. Got married, opened up a business, opened up a tattoo shop. Took a year off school to open up my business. My wife seen me tattoo. She was like, you should open up a business because you're really good. So I opened up my business, and yeah, we took our last dollar. Like, I won bursaries at George Brown College, so I won a bunch of bursaries. Alfred Eli, Miziwe, a bunch of bursaries. I had a bunch of bursaries that I won, and it came up to a lot of money. So my wife put my money away and this and that, and so we opened up we took all that money and some of her money, and we opened up a tattoo shop. Opened up my tattoo shop, and you know, took a year off school because I only had my placement left to do. So yeah, I opened up my, and then I went back to school last year, and then I graduated this year. I graduated community work, so I did my placement at the food bank at Fort York Food Bank. Yeah, and then I did my first placement over at the Métis Nation. That's when I helped that girl.
Yes.
So helping people, that's what I went to school for, you know, activists and stuff. I did a lot of political science and, you know, things like that. So that's why I look at things in a different perspective when I analyze things and look at things. Sociology and political science sort of helps me look at things in a different perspective, and it makes me understand things differently. Yeah, so what I did was I took my culture and I took a lot of what I was thinking and put it into my business.
Like, it's called Indigenous.
Yeah, so I was doing the North American Indigenous Games with my friend Jason Carter. His name is Bear Standing Tall. So I was like, I'm gonna call it Midship Inc., or I'm gonna call it something. And he's like, just call it Indigenous. He said, stop messing around. And he's my elder, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good name. He's like, and if you call it that, good things will come. I says, okay, good. I was like, thank you. I'm gonna call it that. Then he's like, okay, thank me later, he said. So I called it that. And I was in the van coming back from training, the cultural sensitivity training for the North American Indigenous Games with Jason Carter. He hired me to go work with him there to train the cultural sensitivity training for all the people that were working for the North American Indigenous Games, because there was a lot of Indigenous people coming from Northern Ontario, and it's sort of like a culture shock, and they want to smudge, or they want, you know, and when they ask questions, like, they don't want non-Indigenous people to sort of scare them away. We sort of gave them the rundown on what to do and how to treat Indigenous people from a different secluded area.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. It was like 1,500 people.
And where did that take place?
I think it was, where was it? Humber or something?
Oh, it was Humber.
Or something, or whatever. I'm not sure. Somewhere around there. Humber, whatever, I don't know. I don't remember. It was a while back.
While
you know
back.
what I mean?
No,
It's a
but
while
then-
back. I have so much going on. You know what I mean?
I
It's
mean,
like-
and that's what I want to commend you for, because, you know, talking about your personal story and the struggles that you've been through in your life, but you've persevered so much and you've still been able to succeed in ways that you want.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's very powerful.
The thing is, I got addicted to opiates when my kids died in 2003. So I had a 4-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter that died in a fire in 2003.
Sorry.
And then that's when I got addicted to opiates and I got a little messed up. But then 2013 my grandfather died, when on the day my grandfather, on his funeral day, the last day of his funeral, I told my cousin Kim, I said, bring me to rehab, drop me off.
Wow.
So she dropped me off. I had my bag and I was already planning it. I was like, that's it, I'm done.
Wow.
So I quit methadone and that cold turkey. It was like,
Wow.
and I never touched methadone since.
Good for you.
So yeah, I was 155 pounds and I'm about 197 pounds right now.
Wow. So you've it's truly, the word I was going to use is persevered, and you truly have persevered.
Yeah.
And recognizing, because someone might see you and not know your story,
Yeah.
right? And so you know what you've been through.
I was homeless, you know, I was homeless, didn't have a dime, I didn't have $2 to rub together, now I own a business.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. And beautiful home.
Nobody gave me nothing though, like my dad was poor, my dad was on disability. When my dad died, I had to bury my dad.
Wow.
So I had to pay for his, I had to pay for his burial. When my kids died, I had to pay for their burial. When I never got anything from nothing, you know, so my whole life I struggled.
So what does it mean now to be successful then for you?
I mean, if you think it's successful, I think it's successful because I am doing such good positive things, but I mean, I'm not super
Hey,
successful as I wish I could be.
But I mean, you're at a place where
I'm in a good place.
Yes,
I'm in a good
exactly.
place. I'm in a good place. But you know, I still worry. You know what I mean? I get scared every day, just like everybody else should. You know, I get scared because I love my family that I have right now. I have a beautiful daughter. She's 9 months old, and I have a beautiful wife that does everything and loves me. You know, I mean, I can't ask for a better wife. So, I mean, I get scared that, you know, I can't make ends meet, or you know, little things like that. So I mean, it's just the fear that every man has, you know, because I don't have a 9 to 5. I own my own business, so I mean, I have to grind still.
around the clock, yeah.
You know, so I mean, I worry, right? So I live my days worrying still, right? I mean, but I'm happy, you know. At least I'm not where I was yesterday, you know.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so you said so much, and I'm for me, it's just very inspiring, and again, I commend you because, you know, walking down the street, you look at people, you might judge people, you might just, I don't know, whatever thought you might have about people, but knowing that someone truly has a story and they have a struggle and they have a path that they've been through to get to where they are is so important. And so the last question I want to ask you is that if you were to talk to your younger self, the younger self that maybe was struggling, that didn't have the confidence, that, you know, may have been insecure, right now, if you were to talk to them right now, what would you say?
I mean, I don't even know.
You don't know.
I mean, I'd probably be shocked. You know, I'm sort of a hothead, so I might even fight that younger self of mine, you know? So I don't even know, right? I mean, but if I had to give some words of wisdom and not punch them out, you know, I'd probably say you know, open your eyes and love the people beside you, you know, hold the people close that you love, and, you know, commit yourself to them. Don't just, you know, abandon the people that you love, right? So if you're gonna do something, do it right. You know, don't just be selfish. That's it. You know, that's basically what I would say, right? Don't be selfish, right? Because when I was using and I was an addict and I was selfish, I wasn't thinking of anybody but myself. You know, especially my loved ones, right? I wasn't thinking of my loved ones at all. And I'm not talking just like the close loved ones, I'm talking about all my family members, every one of them. Like my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my brother, my grandma, my grandpa, my dad, everybody, you know, everybody around me like suffered for the stupidity that I've done, you know? So I mean, I can say I'm sorry 50,000, 100, a billion, a trillion times, and you know, that means nothing. But you know what? The one thing that I do know is that if I just keep pushing forward the way I'm doing now, positive, I don't have to say I'm sorry. You know, I just, you know, action is more than words, you know? So I mean, I just keep doing what I'm doing and that's it, you know? I mean, that's all I can do, right? It's just push out positivity. Right?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a super, super positive and I think beautiful interview because I got to know more about the work that you do beyond just the title of Indigenous, right? And so, okay. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And again, this is You Are Power Radio.
Power Radio.
Hey, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.